My son was even more wiggly and more he couldn't focus, and he would go into off like just crazy tantrums at the blink of an eye, and we could never figure out what the triggers were. And when we looked at his diet and we looked at how much simple carbohydrate and how much sugar he was consuming, even though we were eating pretty healthy compared to a lot of families, we thought, well, let's try this. And we pulled out the simple carbohydrates and the sugars, and he was a different kid. He was
Oh, wow.
completely different kid. He could focus, he's still high energy, still lots going on, but he wouldn't go into off the wall tantrums at no provocation, and he could focus when we'd ask him a question. So many times we'd have to be like, "Clap, clap, focus, like, come back here. We're still here talking." Like, you left in the middle of the conversation. So that was kind of the third straw, and that was where I started tying together my work as a teacher with my own family.
Hey there, I'm Carrie, social worker and founder of Play Motion Kids. Welcome to Wait, Am I Saving the World? This podcast is for the people shaping childhood, at home, in classrooms, and in our communities. Around here, we talk about what it really takes to raise the next generation of change makers through conversations about child welfare and development, parenting, education, and everything it takes to show up for kids without losing yourself in the process. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody. This is Carrie with Wait, Am I Saving the World? And today I am so excited to welcome Katie Barngrover to the show. She is a functional diagnostic
Nutrition practitioner.
Thank you.
It's a
Thank you,
mouthful.
Katie. I don't need to write this out. I got the initials. I got this. I did not have this. So thank you for the save.
You're welcome. It's a mouthful.
Yes, it is. That's so FDNP.
Yes.
Yes. And she actually used to be a teacher for many years, over a decade,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. 12 years.
And she has started some nutrition coaching based off of what she learned in the classroom and some things she's seen with her students and with her own family. And so I'm so excited here today to learn from her and hopefully get some good tips about some things we can incorporate into our lifestyle to help make things just a little bit easier. So thank you for being here, Katie.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So before we get into it, explain a little bit about what a FDNP, I won't even try. Explain to us a little bit what that is, what that means, what it is that you do.
Yes, yes. So I want a disclaimer first. I am not a certified nutritionist. I am not, none of those fancy titles. A functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner is a certification in which we look at how does the body function. We look at what messages is the body sending as to what isn't working correctly. That's the diagnostic piece. It is not a diagnostic tool like you go to your physician for.
Okay.
But we're looking at what is the body, what messages are the body sending us? And then we use food and other lifestyle changes in the nutrition aspect in order to help people modify their own behaviors based on the messages that their unique bodies are sending them. So I do a lot of functional lab testing in order to help decode the individual messages unique to every person. And to back up a little bit in my story, I was, as you said, a math and science teacher for middle school and high school for 12 years. And I really enjoyed it. There was a whole lot of reasons to leave. Part of it had to do with my family's health story, but a bigger part of it had to do with I recognized that what my students needed, I couldn't give them from within the classroom. I watched my students come in with school breakfast filled up with cinnamon rolls and Pop-Tarts and sugar juice and things that I knew were not nourishing to the body. But I also knew that our federal guidelines, that our school district had to follow the federal guidelines. And that's what our pyramid said, was that carbohydrates are at the bottom. And so even though they're whole grain carbohydrate cinnamon rolls, they're still incredibly unhealthy for our children. And I would watch their behavior 30, 45, 60 minutes after they ate this stuff, and they would be crazy bouncing off the walls, and then they would be flopped in their desks, and they're barely stay conscious because they came off their sugar high. Then they would go to the vending machine and they would get a soda or they would get an energy drink, and we would follow the same cycle all over again. And it was frustrating because there was nothing that I could do to change what the school was offering, because that's how the school got funding for food. But I also knew that I needed to speak up and I needed to help our children learn to eat better. And that's part of what led me to FDN.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So, you mentioned a little bit about what you were seeing in the classroom, but you also said that your family had their own health journey. So, what did that look like?
So that started with me about 9 years ago. My husband and I got married. We got pregnant right away. We had a healthy baby boy. Everything was great. 2 years later, we were trying to expand our family, and we ended up having three miscarriages in a row.
I'm sorry.
And it's been a journey. It's been a wonderful journey, and it's helped a lot of women because I went through that. It helped me a lot because I went through it. So I don't regret it at this point, but it was certainly very hard at the time. And what I discovered about the messages my body was sending me was that I had a serious food sensitivity to dairy. I was off the charts, high inflamed whenever I consumed dairy, but I consumed a lot of cheese. I was never a big fan of ice cream or milk, but I loved cheese. And
Who doesn't?
exactly, so good.
Yes. Everybody loves cheese.
Yes. But what that meant was that I was too inflamed to provide proper nutrition to the baby. And so, in the process of trying to uncover why I had a healthy baby boy and now I couldn't carry another pregnancy, I uncovered this part of my health story. And after I gave up dairy, I felt amazing. I had headaches in the back of my spine for my back of my head for my entire life. And when I gave up dairy, those went away. And I had no idea they were related to dairy. I always just thought they were tension headaches. And they weren't at all. They were food sensitivity. And so, through that process beginning, I learned how much food impacts all of our bodies. And then, so we had a healthy baby girl after that. She's now almost 7. But then shortly after that, my husband had troubles with his digestive system, and, a year's worth of testing and take this medication and go get this scope and do this, take your Tums and all the things, and nothing helped. And finally, he ended up with a scope that confirmed celiac disease. And we were in the process of starting just to eliminate foods for him because we didn't know what else to do. The doctors didn't have an answer. And once we eliminated gluten for him, the world changed. He lost 20 pounds or more. I don't even know. It was amazing. He felt so much better. And for me as the mom, I was able to watch him play with our children. He couldn't before because it hurt every time they would pounce on him and wrestle with him and play with him. And so as soon as that went away, that relationship changed, which was wonderful. So
Isn't
then,
that amazing?
oh,
Oh
it's
my
so amazing.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're talking about something like nutrition, but
Mhm.
it turns into, "No, I can play with my kids."
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It was tied, and that's, part of our story is, we all know we should eat healthy. We have a vague idea of what that should look like. But we're not cookie cutters. Everybody doesn't require the same things. And that's what part of my story was teaching me, was that what I can consume, my husband can't, and what he can eat, I can't. And what makes us both feel good doesn't help our kids. And we're all unique enough that to follow the standard advice means that we are probably not feeling as good as we could. And then in some cases, we're dealing with physical symptoms that we don't have to if we would just listen to our own body signals instead of listening to the standard advice,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yes. No, 100%, 100%. And so this is actually about medication, but I was talking to somebody the other day that they were trying to help their child with an ADHD medication, and they had cycled through some and were not seeing any progress at all. And their doctor sent them for a test. I think it was called GeneSight, but it looks specifically at what medications work with their body and work against their body. And every single standard one that a doctor, would put a child on, nope, in the red. not
Yeah,
shouldn't
don't
take
have
that
this
one.
one.
And so they went to this off-label, random medication that's barely used, and it has opened up an entire new world for this family. Everybody is getting along. The child's able to focus in school. He's not in trouble all the time, you know, and that's exactly the same thing with food, right? If we're following the standard guidelines, that might not work specifically for us.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's what happened with my son. That was the third piece of the story that kind of pushed us into we need a different path was we he was having off the wall tantrums. I was always an active kid. Like my teachers when I was young would let me wander around my desk as long as I didn't poke anybody else, I could move. As a teacher, I was always okay with that with my students in the class. I'm like, just go to the back and move. I mean, I don't want to tie you in the desk for an hour.
Right.
And it was amazing how many didn't, even though they really needed to. But my son was even more wiggly and more he couldn't focus. And he would go into off like just crazy tantrums at the blink of an eye, and we could never figure out what the triggers were. And when we looked at his diet and we looked at how much simple carbohydrate and how much sugar he was consuming, even though we were eating pretty healthy compared to a lot of families, we thought, well, let's try this. And we pulled out the simple carbohydrates and the sugars, and he was a different kid. He was
Oh, wow.
completely different kid. Um, that he could focus, I mean, he's still high energy, still lots going on, but he wouldn't go into off the wall tantrums at no provocation. And he could focus when we'd ask him a question. We'd have so many times we'd have to be like, clap, clap, focus, like, come back here. We're still here talking. Like you left in the middle of the conversation. And so that was kind of the third straw. And that was where I started tying together my work as a teacher with my own family. It was like this, my big kids in my classroom don't have tantrums the same way my son does, but I'm watching their behavior mirror what is happening with him because of the way that they were eating.
Right.
And so I decided I needed to have a way to help people identify what their foods were that was that were lighting them up in different ways. We all have different symptoms of food troubles in our body when foods we shouldn't eat or foods we should eat that we're not getting enough of. We don't always hear those messages well in our body, and that's what I do now as an FDN.
So, talking about messages that your body is sending,
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about what we should be looking for. What messages? What does that look like?
Yeah. So one of the weird things about food sensitivities, and a lot of people say, "Well, I've done food sensitivity testing and it wasn't helpful." And I'm gonna try to make this not down a really big rabbit hole because I'm really good at that. But there are several types of food sensitivity testings. One is where you go in and you get your back scratched or your arm scratched, and they see what puffs up on your skin. That is a true allergy test. They're looking for an immediate response, immediate inflammation to this, and we can almost always, when we have an actual food allergy, that shows up within, seconds to 60 minutes. And we almost always know in our gut which food it was that lit us up. So those are not what I'm talking about. But the foods that our body doesn't want produce an inflammatory response, but it's delayed. It can be 12, 18, 24. It can even be up to 72 hours later that food is producing inflammation that you would recognize as inflammation. And so one of the tricky things about food sensitivities is it's really hard to identify which food it was, and then our body carries the antigens in the body for a length of time. So if you've had a lot of that food over a while, it can take a lot of weeks before you see relief from those symptoms, if you can even pinpoint what they are. Like I was saying, I didn't even know that my headaches were caused by dairy until I gave up dairy for a month. And then I didn't have headaches. I didn't really even recognize that they were gone until I went back and had dairy and had a whopper of a headache. Thought I had a hangover, but I'd only had one beer with my pizza. I'd had 3 pieces of pizza. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the cheese. That's not the beer that made my head hurt.
You're like, beer's fine. No
Yeah,
cheese.
yeah, not in large doses, but
Right.
I knew I hadn't had a large dose that night. And so so it can be pain in joints. Oftentimes the inflammation from these food sensitivities will travel and stick in places where you've had past injuries. So it can be smooth muscle issues, drippy nose. It can be that cough you've perpetually got that you just can't seem to ever get rid of. It can be digestive troubles. It can be sleep issues. We can have trouble sleeping because the body is fighting the inflammation from the food sensitivities. Those are probably the big ones. There's a bunch more, but those are probably, if you have a chronic symptom in this arena and you can't seem to figure it out, that's a place to begin. is to look at food testing to figure out, is there something in your body? And I go back to food testing a lot because it can take so long for symptoms to show up.
Mhm.
Like I said, even up to 72 hours later, that it's just really hard to eat a diet in which you're removing the suspect food when you're not even sure in the last 4 days, 3 days, what did I eat that
Right.
might be causing
Yes.
it? And
And
then
then you
some
might
of them
have
are
to wait a month, right, to know if you even feel better.
exactly, exactly. So I think food testing is a much more simple way in our crazy, crazy world of identifying that. And then when you go to our kids, if we food sensitivity test our kids, but they can't always tell us. My son couldn't tell me that his brain was on fire and that he couldn't focus because he was just all over the place. And so it wasn't until we thought to remove those carbohydrates from him that he saw the calming. And he's still young and he's starting to figure out, the other day he mentioned, he's like, oh, I had too much sugar this weekend. I can't focus today. I was like, yes, we're winning. We're
Yeah.
not there yet, but we're winning.
Can recognize it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yes.
Yeah, so and I've had several other wins working with kids on food sensitivities. That's just been super fun.
Yeah, that's great. So, okay, so speaking of, and it sounds like testing may be the best way to do this because food information is so overwhelming. And I even know this in my own household because I have always enjoyed reading about nutrition, longevity, all the longevity research they have out now. And my husband has just recently got on that bandwagon, and we are not following and listening to the same people.
Yeah,
So
it's
he's like,
totally
they
different messages.
they say do this, and I'm like, let me go pull a book out for you because they don't say to do that, right?
Yeah, yes,
you
exactly.
know, this is good for you, this is bad for you. So how do people kind of cut through some of that and figure out what is actually helpful for themselves and for their kids?
Yes. So I think, in a picture perfect world, in my world, we would all test because that's how I can get to your unique story. If you're not in a place to test because it's not crazy expensive, but it's not super cheap either, then uh, what we find is a lot of people do best by cutting out gluten, which is wheat, rye, and barley are the three most common grains that have gluten in them. Cutting out dairy, cutting out eggs sometimes. I'm eggs I'm on the fence on, and then corn. And so corn, gluten, and dairy all cross react, which means they in the body, to make it in simple terms, they pretend to be each other. So if you have a gluten sensitivity, but you're eating a lot of corn, even if you cut out gluten, you might find that corn is tricking the body into thinking you're still getting gluten. And once you clean out the body, once you do that deep cleaning and it's gone for a while, then the corn may not trick the body anymore. But when it's inflamed, it doesn't always tell the difference between the dairy and the corn and the gluten. And so if you're not at a place where you want testing, it's a big ask to take all of those out at once because that's darn near every processed food you're going to find is going to have some of those in it.
Right? I'm like, what are people doing for Thanksgiving week, Katie? Like,
Yeah. Yep.
help us out here.
Yeah, so you're gonna eat turkey and you're gonna
Right.
eat potatoes and you're not gonna do gravy unless, yeah, you're just probably not gonna do gravy. Yeah, so in a picture perfect world, you're going to whole real foods.
Right.
And for 30 to 60 days, nothing that comes out of a barcoded package, save eggs that have a barcode on the box. But you know what I mean? Like they're still whole real foods. We just can't package them in something with a barcode.
Right.
Um, you're staying away from dairy, you're staying away from sugar for 30 to 60 days and see how you feel. And then you start testing foods one at a time to bring them back in. You don't go back to the crackers that are not just gluten. They are so many other things in the crackers. You go back to adding a little bit of flour and maybe making that gravy for your turkey. That's just the flour and the beef broth or the chicken broth and the fat, whatever fat you were using.
Right.
Another place to start is seed oils. Those are incredibly inflammatory. And so, if testing isn't where you're at either, that's another one that's a good just first step to take. If it says soybean oil, if it says vegetable oil, if it says canola oil, pitch it in the garbage. We should be eating butter. We should be eating beef tallow. We should be eating ghee. Olive oil is not bad, and coconut oil is not bad. Palm oil isn't terrible. I've lost one. I don't eat a lot of those. The fats are going to help the inflammation to clear out of the body better.
Okay. So you mentioned testing being the best option, and I 100% agree. To me, it sounds like that's where everybody should start, but you're right, that might not be always the most accessible.
Correct.
So how does someone approach their doctor with this information, or how do they go about getting tested if they're
Mhm.
interested? Because I'm looking at what you talked about the messages were. And food sensitivity testing, I am 100% certain would not be the first line of defense
No, no, it
when,
wouldn't be.
yes, if they go in and say, I have joint pain, they're not going to say, let's see
Let's
if
do
you have any food sensitivities,
right. They're going to
right?
say, let's do an MRI. Oh, you need surgery.
Yes.
The Advil's not working anymore. You have, yeah.
Yes. Let me give you
Um,
some arthritis medication or, whatever it may be. So
yeah.
how does someone go about advocating for themselves with that, or how do they access this if they're interested?
Yes. So let me back up 1 second and talk about the two kinds of food sensitivity testings that are very common out there. One is called an IgG test, and that is the one that most practitioners are most familiar with. And it is not my favorite kind of test, and I'm going to tell you why here in just a second. The second one is called the MRT test, or the mediator release test. So the IgG test is an antibody test, and we all know about antibodies from COVID. An antibody is simply a flag that the body creates for something that it doesn't like. The trick with antibodies, though, is that the body will create an antibody for something it sees as an invader. So it will pin it and say, immune system, you need to attack this and get rid of it. Or the body will pin an antibody on something it calls trash. And it says, we don't want this here. We don't know what it is. It's not hurting us, but it's just kind of clogging up the works. Let's get rid of it. Those have very different responses in the body. They're both stressful on the body, but one is significantly more stressful than the other. So on an IgG test, it doesn't differentiate between trash and between an immune response, which means that we take everything out that's on the IgG test and we're living a very restricted diet, and we probably feel a fair bit better because half of those things probably were producing an immune response. But eventually the diet is just, we can't live this way anymore. I can't eat anything. It's all off limits. But then we don't know where to go. We don't know which ones to start adding back because we don't know which we're trash and which we're immune system. And so then we just kind of give up. We do the whole thing and now we don't feel good again and we're still not sure why. And so that's the reason that I don't particularly like the IgG test. If that's the only one you can do it because you will get some information, but then you need to be really methodical about how you add foods back because some of those that are really high may not actually be inflammatory for you. They may just be your body's not digesting them well enough and it sees them as trash. So the mediator release test is testing a live blood sample genuinely for inflammation. Now, it can miss things. It is not perfect, but it doesn't typically have false positives. So when you see something that's inflammatory on that test, then it is, almost a guarantee. Can't guarantee anything, but almost a guarantee that it is
99.8%.
right. That it is a problem for you. And so what we do with the MRT test is we take out all of the inflammatory foods for 60 days, and then we methodically add them back one at a time, starting with the ones you missed the most, not the ones that were the most reactive. And we build a diet for you based on how your body responds to reintroducing those foods once we've cleaned it up. And that's what I found with success for my children not my own kids, but my clients that are children, is when we clean things up, their behaviors change, their digestive system improves, they feel loads better, anxiety decreases. I have a beautiful little autistic boy who doesn't speak and started speaking, not sentences yet, but words, which he'd never done. And so we're seeing just amazing things by reducing that inflammation in the body. And then we very intentionally add back one at a time. And you can see the symptoms return because now you've had a 60-day gap in those symptoms. So to get MRT testing, you have to find a practitioner who will run them. Typically, that's not your doctor, and they're not typically covered by insurance. I can run them. There are other FDNs like me that will run them for you. And I'm certain that the MRT, the mediator release test company, probably has a list of practitioners that you could seek out.
You mentioned all the success you've seen with your student clients, and gaining the ability to have speech is just about probably one of the most amazing testimonies,
It was
right? That,
extraordinary, yeah, and
yeah,
it's still he's still very early. It's still, 1 or 2 words. It hasn't been,
yeah,
the floodgates open, but it was still quite astonishing to hear that progression for
yes.
him. He's 10, and
I
so
mean, that is worth celebrating. No,
yes.
no matter how much progress it is worth celebrating.
Yes.
So, what is one thing that you wish every teacher knew that's in the classroom with kids, and maybe they're not seeing the ties that you are. They don't have the personal experience that you do or the knowledge and expertise that you do. They're just seeing the behavior.
Mhm.
So what is one thing that you wish that they knew? What is their takeaway from this?
I I wish that as teachers, we were taught how much poor nutrition for our students can impact their ability to focus and their energy, their behavior. And I think at some level, most of us know that, but I think the grace that we can give to our students expands when we look at the snacks they bring into our classroom and we know that that is not meeting their nutritional needs. And we know this student and their home life might not also be having their nutritional needs met at home. And we know that our cafeteria is also not having their nutritional needs met at home. It just gives us more grace to have more patience with those students. Doesn't excuse the behavior. It doesn't mean the disruption in class is okay. But I think it helps us react from a more calm place that they're not doing it to be a little turd, to push our buttons. They just can't help themselves because what their bodies need and what their bodies don't need, they're not getting that right balance. And that's the other piece we haven't talked about is we can test for food sensitivities, things you shouldn't eat, but I think it's also equally important to test for the things you do need. Every human body doesn't need the same ratio of foods, meaning the food pyramid was which we know is baloney, and
Yes.
they're redoing it as we speak. But nonetheless, that's what we have to go off of right now.
Right.
Um,
We're not saving that much of the world, Katie.
right, right. But some people need more carbohydrates than they need protein and fat. Some people need more protein and fat than they need carbohydrate. And it's equally important to find out as you're trying to get rid of foods you shouldn't be eating, what does your plate need to look like for you to feel your best? Are you getting the right balance of fuels? I tell my clients a lot that everybody has a fire within them. Call it your metabolism if you want. Okay. And every fire needs a different or a ratio of fuel. Okay. If I have a campfire inside of my body and I put paper on it, it's going to poof, burn up, be gone, and I'm going to be exhausted. I have to give it log type fuels that burn more slowly so that my energy will last through the day longer. But if I have a candle type fire in my body and I put a log on it, I'm going to squish it out. And that log's going to sit there and nothing's going to happen to it and it's not going to digest and I'm going to feel gross. And so we have to figure out which one are you, or are you a combination of both? People are anywhere in the spectrum. And so that's the other piece is what fuel makes your body feeds your fire the best.
So does the testing give you that piece of the puzzle, or is that something different?
It's a separate test. That one
Okay.
is called metabolic typing. And that's typically when I'm working with somebody, I want to do both. It's a little more tricky with kids because that test is a lot of questions. How are you feeling when? And
Mm.
so, depending on the age of the child, we may or may not do that one, but that one's definitely a good one for adults. And if you do it for both parents in the household, generally speaking, your kid is somewhere between, near the both of you. That's how it happens with all of the genetics. It works that way with food too. So we can usually get as we zoom in on the parents' nutritional needs, we usually get pretty close to what the kid needs.
Okay.
So yeah.
So what is one food or habit that you wish every family could adopt that pretty much across the board? Like take testing out of the
Yeah.
equation. What is something that is just going to help most people?
I wish we would stop shopping in the middle of the grocery store.
Mm.
I
Shop
wish that,
shop the edges.
yes, that everything we sent with our kids to school came from the edges of the grocery store. There were no Oreo cookie snacks. There were no granola bars. There were no bags of chips. There were no fruit cups filled with sugar. that we sent them with an apple, maybe cut up with some peanut butter. We sent them, with a yogurt. We'll be careful with those. They have a lot of sugar, but they're better than the granola bars. I think if that's one change we could make, that we don't let kids take anything out of the house that comes from the middle of the grocery store. And I know that's really hard because the stuff that's on the outside is perishable. And so
Hmm.
if they don't have an ice pack in their lunchbox, or they don't have, there's a balance we have to find there. But just to eat from the outside of the grocery store would change a tremendous amount, an immense amount. Those two words together become whatever I was just going to say. um,
We knew what you meant.
yeah, exactly. So, you would see energy increase in a healthy way. You would see crazy energy decrease. You would see focus increase. You would see gastrointestinal issues improve. And I'm not saying they would all go away, but by getting rid of that center of the grocery store from your child's um, diet at all, not even just going out of the house, but I mean, that would be the starting place. You would see a lot of things improve in your kids.
So how do you help the parents of your clients when you're working with a child client navigate the fact that they're going to school with a cut up orange or apple, and then when snack time comes around, all their friends have the granola bars or the Oreos?
Uh-huh.
Is there some type of mindset or thing that you tell them to help them navigate that situation?
So I think one of the best places to start is over a vacation where you give them 2, 3, 4, summer vacation worth of practice eating foods that make them feel good. And then you have time to zoom in on what the snacks are that they appreciate the most. I think a second trick for your 5th grade and under is to rope in the teacher. I want my kids to eat healthy snacks. And so if you're going to give out treats in the classroom, I will buy special treats you can give to them. Not to the whole class, I'm not asking that, but so for example, in my son's class, they would do prizes and there would be a box full of sugar stuff that she would give to the kids. And I said, please don't let him buy those with his tickets. And I would get a box of erasable pens, and I would get a box of little Matchbox cars and things that he could have, and she would let him choose out of that for the prize box. And then the conversations that he and I would have would be, remember that you feel better when you're eating better food. You don't get in trouble as much at school. And here are some tools that you can use with your friends. Like when they offer it to you, say, no, thanks. I don't feel so good when I eat that. Doesn't mean they can't eat it. Doesn't mean we're harassing. And then I would also give him times when it was okay. We never said no to birthday party treats at school. Because then it was special. And we always made sure the teacher would tell us so that when he came home and he was bananas, we knew what was going on. But we try to keep him as much engaged in how his body feels when he eats that stuff so that he can make better choices. There came a point in time where we needed to have a reward system. If you get home and you've said no to a friend, we're going to do this special thing. Or, you didn't take the treats of your friend, or, you could honestly we had verification from teachers sometimes as we were going through that process. But we had to get his buy-in because there's way too much on offer at school. And then we stopped letting him eat school lunch because there was nothing on that plate. Pulled my kids out to homeschool, and I quit teaching a year before we pulled them out. And so that whole year I went to school and ate lunch with them once a week. And I was appalled. It was like all I could do to not
You were
throw trays at the garbage.
crawling out of your skin.
Yes. And so we would have conversations at school. I'd be looking at my kids and I'm like, so, what on that plate is a good thing to eat? And my kids would be like, nothing. There's nothing on that plate. I'm like, you're right. And some of their little friends are like, I shouldn't eat any of this. Like, no, you want to feel good.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah. It's like, start with the meats, start with the protein.
right.
So education, like just keeping him in the loop and not beating him up when he made a mistake, but trying to help redirect, I think was.
Those are so good, Katie. I mean, that is so helpful, and and there are so many different ways,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've tried a lot of
So
them.
I love that's really going to help some people. So, do you have a myth that you like to debunk about healthy eating? Is there like one food or one belief around food that you're just like, no, that is so not
Yes.
true?
Fat. Fat is my favorite one. Eating healthy fat does not make you fat. Eating healthy fat does not create heart disease. Now we have to talk about what healthy fat is, and I've already mentioned it, when we were talking a little bit earlier. Healthy fats are fats that are balanced in linoleic acid and alpha linoleic acid. They come from animals and a few plants. So butter, lard, beef tallow, olive oil sometimes. So the tricky part with olive oil is that it is often adulterated. And so if it's adulterated, it's no good. If it's not in a glass bottle, if it's not dark, and if it's not extra virgin olive oil, the chances are it's not actually olive oil. So that's one of the reasons I'm really sketchy about olive oil, is because it's really hard to get good quality olive oil.
So glass bottle, dark,
Mhm.
extra virgin.
Yes, you're
Got it.
more likely to be in a good space. You're not guaranteed, but you're heading on the direction of probably.
Right.
Yeah.
We got a head start on the race anyway.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Um, Coconut oil, if it's organic and not hot. I mean, you just want a good quality coconut oil. Palm and avocado, they're like my least favorite of the healthy oils, but they're way better than your vegetable oil, soybean oil, canola oil. Those are awful. Anytime you're getting fried food at a restaurant, 99 times out of 100, it's the oils you don't want to eat. And so don't eat those. And so one of the reasons that this bothers me so much is that all of our hormones are made from fat. So when we don't let our kids eat healthy fats, or we let them eat poor fats, which is in all processed foods, their hormones can't form the right shapes. Healthy fats should be solid at room temperature, and they form cells in a good, healthy, round shape. Our unhealthy fats make our cells do all these crinkle up things, and they can't operate the way they're supposed to. They make our hormones do that, and our hormones don't operate the way they're supposed to. And so fats are not bad for us. The wrong fats are bad for us.
Oh my goodness.
I
Well,
could
in
keep going,
listening
but
to
I
you
will stop.
talk, I'm just like, forget the kids for a minute. Every
Yeah.
woman over 45 needs to hear this, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. We're always afraid to eat fat, and we put,
Yes.
I can't have, I don't want cheese on
Right.
my burger. I don't want to eat a burger. I don't want, give me the 90% lean. Don't eat the 90% lean. Eat fatter burger. It's better for you.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And there's not a group that has more hormonal problems than,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Well, and so another thing about fat is that it's satiating. When you have enough fat on board, you're not still hungry. So when you eat Doritos, for example, I mean, how many of us could just sit down and eat a whole bag of Doritos? That's because there's no nutritional value in there. The fat isn't satiating. Your body's looking at this fat going, I don't even know what to do with this. Stick it here, stick it there, but give me more food because this isn't filling my nutritional gaps. When you eat, let's say fried eggs with fried in butter, okay, there is a limit to how many of those you want, because you reach a level of full. Your body says, "Ooh, I have all the nutrients I need right now. Now I need to process and move things around and build things I'm supposed to be doing." And so that's one of the really powerful things about healthy fats, is they actually help us turn on our satiation hormones.
Oh my goodness. I'm taking notes. Okay. Like, I can't write fast enough, so I will definitely be going back through. Oh my goodness. Okay. So when it comes to kids specifically, what is your biggest overall concern?
We are not teaching our children to eat in a way that is going to give them longevity and health for a lifetime. And that's not our fault as parents. For the last 30 years, we've been taught lies. We've been taught that fat is bad for us. We've been taught that carbohydrates are good for us. And we have some skepticism, if we haven't dove into the world of health and nutrition, as to changing that, because that's what we were touted in the 80s, 90s, 2000s was healthy for us. We've been taught all of the superfoods are magical. Go get your kale, go get your goji berries, go get your, whatever. And they're not. They're not magical foods for everyone.
Hmm.
We need to find what makes us feel the best. And when I say that, I'm saying in the moment is important for how you feel, but 60 to 90 minutes later is equally as important. I can eat a bag of Doritos and feel beautiful right now. Man, that just tastes so good and it fits good. And 15 minutes later, I want to barf.
Right.
I don't feel good. So it has to be both. When you have both happening, you've found a food that your body likes. And we have to be teaching our children to pay attention to how they feel when they eat it and after they eat it so that they can identify the foods that help build them into strong, productive, attentive, healthy people. One of the pieces of my mission is to help people become healthy, because healthy people are happy people. And happy people don't make a mess of the world the way we have right now. And I want to help bring peace to the world by helping people find peace in their own bodies.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. I love that. So, is there anything that gives you hope right now about what the future for kids and nutrition looks like?
I think we're turning a corner. I think the MAHA movement has been huge for our country. Whether or not we like the exact path that it's on, I think it has opened eyes in our culture to how poor off we are in terms of health. And I don't think the government can or should fix everything. I think a huge part of that falls on us. But I think people's eyes weren't opened, and now we are starting to open them. And so I think we need to keep seeking out information. We need to keep finding the things that make us feel the best, like I said, now and later. Um, and then work where we're passionate. There's always places that some people are super passionate about pesticides, and some people are super passionate about regenerative farming and all of those pieces. And I think, we don't need to do them all. No, everybody doesn't need to do all of them. We need to take the pieces that resonate the most with us and incorporate those into our lives, because any one of those pieces is going to make us more healthy.
I love that so much. So, if anybody wants to go deeper or get support, tell them a little bit about where they can find you and about anything that you have coming up.
Perfect. So if you're wanting support for food testing, I am launching a new program. It starts January 7th, which I think is that first Wednesday in the new year, in 26. We will still take applicants to the class for the next 2 weeks after that. And then I'll start another cohort, however you say that.
Cohort. I got you.
I got the R in the wrong spot there. In March, I'll be starting a second one in March. And what we're going to do in that class, it's a group class, will run for 10 weeks. We're going to do both types of food testing I was talking about, the MRT testing, which is what your body doesn't want, and then the metabolic typing testing, which is what your body does want. And then we'll do 10 weeks of support in order to help you make those changes, because you can be looking at the paper and going, great, I need to cut these out. And the next week you're like, okay, but it's in everything. So what do I substitute for? Fill in the blank. And that's where the group coaching is coming into playing, is helping you navigate those changes as you run into those roadblocks. Now, one thing we can do in this one is for just the cost of testing, we can test your family, and then you can go through it, mom or dad, in the group program on your own, and then use that to help your family modify as well. So that's an option. To go sign up for the class, you're going to go to angelwinghealth.com. That's the name of my business, Angel Wing. Angels like to absorb you and protect you, and that's what I'm hoping to do for you. So angelwinghealth.com/still tired, because fatigue is another symptom of foods that we shouldn't be eating or foods we should and aren't. So angelwinghealth.com.
That's why everybody's asleep at 2 o'clock after lunch.
Uh-huh. Yep. That's a huge part of it. Yep. Yep. So angelwinghealth.com/still tired. And if you don't want to wait until the group program, or the group program doesn't sound right for you, you can go to angelwinghealth.com/discovery call and book a 30-minute free meeting with me. And we can talk about what your goals are and what programs that I offer that might fit what you're looking for. Sometimes it's not just food. Sometimes it's hormones. Sometimes it's digestive troubles. We've got lots of ways that we can help. And so I'd rather have a one-on-one conversation and figure out what your goals are. I'm also on Instagram. I think it's at angel.wing.health. Might not have the dots. I can't remember.
It'll be in the show notes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
And then I'm on Facebook, sort of. I really don't like Facebook, so that would not be the first place I would go. But if that's the only place you are, you could probably find some information there. And then I post all of my nutrition talks on my YouTube channel, which I believe is also at angel.wing.health on YouTube.
Awesome. So I'm curious about the testing. So the group cohort, it's virtual?
Yes. Yep. It'll be all Zoom.
So how do you send people for testing?
So that's the beautiful part.
We're going to get into the details.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. The beautiful part about the testing that I do is that almost all of it you do at home. Now, the food testing, you will go to a lab, but the kit that will be sent to you I have one on my desk, but it's buried, so I'm not going to go grab it. But it's just a little box. It comes with all the tubes and all the requisition form and all the stuff. And then it has with it a phone number or a website you can go to that will find a lab near you that will draw the blood. I live in rural Wyoming. There is nobody near me, but my public health does it perfectly fine. So there's always somebody nearby that can draw. You just pay them a draw fee, anywhere from $20 to $80, depending on where you go. And then they just draw the blood. You stick it in FedEx before the overnight shipping deadline, and off it goes. So we can do that from anywhere in the United States. New York is weird, but I'm pretty sure New York is still okay in that one.
New York is weird, Katie.
Yeah, they are weird. Yeah.
Don't kill me, New York. I'm just kidding.
No, we love them, but they got some weird laws as far as the testing goes. So, and then globally, I can do testing globally, but it has to be IgG testing outside the United States. The MRT is only a U.S. product. So, I might be able to do Canada for MRT. That one I can't quite remember, but for sure outside of Canada and US, I have to do IgG testing. So anyway, so you just do that on your own where you're at, and then we get the results back. And I won't talk one-on-one with you about your results because even though they're all unique, the principles are the same. And so that's what we'll be discussing.
There's really more support about how to implement the changes.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. The changes are pretty straightforward. Get rid of your red ones, get rid of your yellow ones, and off we go.
Yeah. Keep anything that's not orange or red. Right?
Exactly. Yep.
The problem is that it sounds a lot easier than it is.
Yes. And that's why I have group coaching after. That's why we have 10 weeks, because it is hard to change our diet. It's like, well, this is what I eat every week. And 3/4 of what this is on my list of things I shouldn't eat. So now what?
Right.
And those are the conversations we want to have in the group. Is what recipes have we found? What strategies have we used? What other, substitutions can we find? Like those are what the group coaching is for, is to help navigate those transitions as you clean up your food to better support your body.
That's amazing. Well, thank you, Katie. Good luck on the group program that starts in January. I appreciate you joining me today.
It's been my pleasure and my honor.
Talk to you later.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show and share it with someone who cares about showing up well for kids. And if you feel called to create real impact in your own community through movement, mindfulness, and whole child learning, you can find out more about becoming a certified PlayMotion Kids instructor at playmotionkids.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, don't forget to make a little time to play, and now get out there and go save the world.